We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast and the White Paper Library. And so we've flown through the phase one, which is learning to think differently through engineered clarity, and learned a lot. It's almost overwhelming. Like you're like, "Ugh, how do I apply everything?" And now we're moving into phase two, and that's the income machine. And we've gone through thinking differently, and today's is on trust. And Cheryl, when I asked you what you'd like to accomplish in this podcast, you said, learn, internalize, um, this white paper. So why do you say that?
Because I've just read a lot of good stuff in here that's true that I have done in my life before that I never really thought about, like the outcome for myself and even others.
What do you mean? Like, what's an example?
Um, like I try to pick apart stuff too much instead of just jumping in and doing it and trusting that it's going to work.
Got it.
I have to know everything, the end result before I start, or it seems that way. Not in every situation, no, but
Right. Too many.
and that can also, from what I'm reading in here, that can also make so that people treat me like that because I treat them like that.
Right. Or they treat you like that because you're treating yourself like that.
That's true too. Yeah. I read that in here too. It's like,
Yeah. So the history of this is, I don't know how many years ago this was put together, quite a number of years ago, probably 10, I'm thinking. And so in coaching and then being a husband and then a father of seven kids, um, I observed and I thought weird on how, like, my kids, like the teenage principal, like Melissa, when she was, sorry, second oldest daughter, when she was 15 and just learning how to drive. So the first time out of our driveway, she's just terrified. I mean, just terrified of driving. And she'd never driven before, and so she was just like shaking. And I said, she's in the driver's seat, and I said, honey, she's getting her permit and stuff. And I said, honey, you're probably going to be like this first time out driving, you're probably going to be the safest driver you'll be in a long time, maybe forever. And she said, why do you say that? I said, well, honey, because you're a pathetic driver and you know it.
mm-hmm.
She kind of looked at me and then cocked her head and then scrunched up her eyes and said, gee, Dad, thanks, I think. And I don't know, about 6 months later, backing out of the same driveway, it was, I was in the passenger seat on the front and she's in the, driver's seat and her friend's in the back and we're backing out. I had just come back from a business trip and her friend in the back seat said, hey, Melissa, did you tell your dad he almost hit the oak tree? So we had big, big oak trees on either side of the driveway. And she says, did you tell your dad you almost hit an oak tree? And she looked at her friend, looked at me, and she said, thanks so much. I hadn't told him. And I said, honey, do you know why? Do you know why you didn't almost hit the oak tree the first time you drove out? And she's like, no. And I said, because honey, you didn't listen to me. Like she didn't internalize what I was saying. And so there's four levels of learning. And so there's unconscious incompetence where we're stupid and we don't know it. We're just, stupid. We don't know it. Then there's a conscious incompetence. So conscious incompetence where we're stupid and we know it. That's where learning can start. And then there's a conscious competence where we're good. We're starting to get good at something and we know it. And then there's unconscious competence where we're great at it. We don't even know we don't even know it. We're just naturally gifted at it. So in business, you know, often after decades of being in business, the business owner goes to a level 4 and you can't clone yourself or put systems in place in level 4. So you have to bring it back to a level 3, conscious competence. But then I thought, like, why don't my kids listen to me? And now that I have 10 grandkids, I was thinking about that last couple of years. And I'm like, why don't they listen to grandpa? When I realized, I said, grandpa's telling them quite a bit. You guys need to be careful. You're gonna get hurt,
Mm-hmm.
especially a couple of them. And I thought every time I tell them that, it probably registers in their mind, grandpa's wrong, where they don't get hurt. And so in their little minds, and so how many times do we warn our children of something, or warn our spouse or our family or friends or coworkers or whatever? And it doesn't happen like we warned. Maybe because they actually listen to us, but they still think we're wrong. And it's like, so in writing this, I'm like, this isn't I've never read a book on something like, I've never seen this anywhere on the internet. I've never seen it in a book I've read. I've never seen it anywhere in a seminar or workshop. Nobody's ever talked about this. And I'm like, I don't think people understand this. I don't think I understand this. So the white paper was to help me to learn how and when to trust people, how and when to trust myself. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts that you have, Cheryl?
No.
Okay. Rosanna, any thoughts you have?
Well, when I read it, I was thinking how people look at me and whether they trust me to do what I say I'm going to do. And so that's what I was thinking about when I read it. I didn't get through the entire thing, but the idea was, am I creating trust to people that I know they trust me to do the things I say I'm going to do?
Got it. See, and that's where, you know, I forget the question I asked you a few weeks back. Like in our 40 years of marriage. Well, I remember Edward Rivera, probably 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I said, Edward, I'm so frustrated in working with pastors. He laughed and he said, so he was a business guy, but he became a pastor, went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And he says, why are you frustrated? I said, they don't have any integrity. They just don't have integrity. They say they're going to do things and they don't do them. And he said, well, Mark, nobody's perfect. They're human beings, which is what groups of people do to other groups of people. I mean, it's amazing. Like, it's absolutely amazing. When you start seeing these things, you don't even know if you want to see them, And so I said, I laughed and I said, well, Edward, you and I have known each other, I don't know what, 20 years? He's like, yeah. I said, is there ever once in 20 years that I said I was going to do something that I didn't do it? And he paused and he says, I can't remember like once. And so, people kind of mock me, laugh with me when I'm not laughing. When I go ahead and say, yeah, I tracked all my mistakes in 1 year and there were 7 of them. And it's weird to see the responses of people. It's interesting. It's intriguing. There's no way. And it's like, so people dismiss, it goes back, well, we're going to see it here in another one. Like these white papers, when you combine them together, my gracious. And this next one, Patience, the Silent Killer, the story on that one, very specific, amazing. But then when you get down into, once we get through, the income machine, then we go to, here's the, quantum thinking and then the internalization model. So this is where, if you haven't gone through the internalization model, it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Like, how do we internalize things? Like young children, we're not born into this world stupid. We're not. There's an awareness from a child that they can't walk, they can't talk. You don't have arrogance or ego in a small child. You just don't. So is that why a small child learns so fast? Is because they're just like an open book and they just see, I want to learn how to walk. I want to learn how to run. I want to learn how to talk. I want to learn how to, think about the amount of work it takes to learn how to communicate what you want. So it's not until we get older and then it really kicks in the teenage. So the teenage principle, which was inspired by Melissa's driving situation, is teenagers are overconfident in things they should be underconfident. They think they can do things they can't do. And then they're underconfident in things they should be overconfident. That's why it's so hard being a teenager. It's why it's so hard being the parent of a teenager. Because the parent goes ahead and, the teenager says, hey, mom, hey, dad, I can do this. And you're like, can you? I don't know. I'm not so sure. You know? And then they go ahead and then 10 minutes later, they're like, well, I can't do this. And you're like, no, I'm pretty sure you can. Pretty sure you know how to do that. But it's not just with, teenagers, adults too. I think it's almost like a metamorphosis every 10 years. So I just turned 60. And from 58 to 62, it's probably going to be pretty rough for Grandpa. Like he's trying new things and learning new things, and he's kind of silly and sassy. And, he's experimenting with new things like, trauma. Let's do some videos. Let's do some podcasts on trauma. Let's talk about Grandpa's trauma or getting attention. So then I'll probably level off at about 61, 62. And so every 10 years, it's like we go through this. I hope we go through this radical change where our brain just shifts. But when we go into, phase 3, life, passion, leverage, and a lot more, these were seasons of life that, probably in my 40s is when 45, I'm guessing, is when I hit this stuff. And so, that's like, and I missed out on all of it, like the identity. Like, what do you want other people to see you as? Like, that's some new pieces here. And then here, this connects down is my biggest challenge is me. And I'm the solution. And this one right here, why I choose not to succeed, the 9 Ds. Like all of this stuff interconnects. Like all this stuff interconnects together. So, it's interesting to me on, trust. Like when you think about human suffering, and literally it's life and death. You make a mistake, on any of these, any of these white papers, if you read them and they don't work, let us know. Say that didn't work, or I have a question. I don't understand. The Q&A, that's where the real magic happens. It's talking about it. It's interacting. It's you providing insight. I can't tell you how many times somebody said, I read your white paper, this and this, Mark. Okay, cool. That's nice. And I loved it. And I'm like, great. What'd you love most about it? They tell me something that they got out of it that I don't even remember putting into it. So I learned something from them about the topic. And so, but you think about the human cost of not being able to discern trust. As a father, it's terrifying when people would tell my 4 daughters or now 6 granddaughters, follow your heart. And it's like, you've not really thought about that, have you? Do you know how many women have followed their heart and the absolute devastation that they've had? I totally believe in trusting your instincts. When those instincts are threatened, like I don't trust that person, something's not right. Totally respect those feelings. But just because you're like, well, I feel this person's safe or this person loves me or this person cares for me, if you're a woman and you feel that, I'd be a little bit cautious, especially if the people around you, are saying, I'm not so sure about that. Your mom and dad, I'm not so sure about that person. Or your siblings or your friends are like, I don't think that person is who you think that person is. So why don't people, when we read this, why don't we get this to everybody? Why don't we get people to read it? Why don't we have discussion groups? Why don't we have multiple, why don't we have multiple podcasts on it? Right? Other thoughts or questions or
Is there a way to learn faster about the personalities, like to read them in other people?
oh yeah. You can tell somebody's personality based on how they say hello.
What?
Uh-huh. Now it's not as fun for the other person because um because if you ask them the questions, the advantage of asking them the questions is that it creates tremendous curiosity. So it pulls them into participate. But yeah, you can go ahead and tell somebody based on how they say hello. So what you're doing is um let's see here. So your first question is that you're asking is the person more assertive or less assertive? And if you're not sure if they're more assertive or less assertive, what are they? Less assertive. Because more assertive people, you tend to know they're more assertive.
Okay.
So you're just based on how they say hello, they will reveal their assertiveness. Like an amiable personality, when they say hello, it feels like you know them their whole life. They're remind you of your mother or grandmother, whoever the sweetest person in the world is. And you're like, I'm gonna like this person. This is a nice person. It's like hello. Like you're like, how can you be so nice with hello? The amiable is. But it's less assertive though. It's not coming in fast. just like, hello. Like you're like, my gracious, that person's a nice person. If the person is going to be less assertive but mechanical, like they pause and they're like, hello. Like, how do you go ahead and say hello perfectly? I don't know. The analytic knows how to do that. And then if they say hello fast and it's funny and they're laughing maybe and talking to somebody else at the same time, like, then it's going to be the expressive. So it's faster and it's funny. Then it's going to be the expressive. And then if it's fast and if they could figure out, if the driver could figure out a way to not have to say hello, they would. It's an inconvenience. So it's just like, you're like, I don't know that I'm going to like this person. And then the second question you're asking is the person focused more on task or more on people? So if they're focused more on task, they're going to be the analytic or the driver. It's a little harder to tell, but if you go ahead and, if they're talking about their vacation, how was your vacation? They're going to talk about tasks or things. So they tend to, like, you don't get warm, fuzzy feelings. You just feel like you're a number. Like they're not connecting with you deeply. You'll perceive they don't care about you. They don't care about you or people. And then if they are people, they're going to be, the expressive or the amiable. So they're going to talk about the fun and the excitement on the vacation. They're going to talk about, they're going to try to get you talking. They're going to try to make you laugh. They're going to try to go ahead and, connect with you. And so many times the analytic or the amiable is one of the, most dangerous people you can have out there. Questions?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Really? Wow. Okay. Because they're naturally gifted at connecting with people. These are often the men who are going to be the sexual predators because children and women will trust the amiable. They're such a nice person, such a nice man.
Gotcha.
So they're naturally gifted in winning people's affections. And then they stab you in the back. So they can be mean little buggers or violent. I mean, these can be the ones that are married and, these can be the ones that are married and everybody thinks you have this greatest husband or greatest wife in the world. They're not. They're mean little buggers, but they never show themselves, to anybody. They never show themselves to who they are to other people. So they care so much about what people think. They have control. They have control over themselves when they're around other people. These are the people that can be, crying publicly. And as soon as the camera's off of them, politicians, a lot of politicians that are amiable. A lot of them are. So if you go ahead and have somebody that's task oriented and less assertive, they're going to be the analytic. So they're going to go ahead and choose the cube often. Or thing that causes the most frustration is when things are out of order. So these are the good, to succeed, to prosper. These are tips for the analytic. If they're more assertive, if they're focused on the task, but they're more assertive rather than less, they're the driver person. So the good to succeed, and then to prosper. So they'll choose the pyramid, and they'll choose out of control. And then if they're more focused on people and more assertive, they're going to be the expressive. So they're going to choose the wavy line or boring or not fun. First the good to succeed and then to prosper. And then if they, if they're focused on the people rather than more assertive, they're less assertive, they're the amiable. So the ball and then conflict with others. And so there's a price, so the amiable wants to go ahead and be seen as a peacemaker, as a friendly person, nice person. That's their identity. So what are they willing to do to protect that identity? To give people the impression, that they're a nice person. They will often lie. And they don't think of it as lying. They think of it as being nice. The driver does not understand this concept. I mean, even after 40 years of marriage, I still don't understand the concept. I mean, mentally I do, but it's like, but you're giving up your soul. Like, people aren't going to trust you. The people closest to you won't trust you because you're telling everybody what they want to hear. You're not going to have deep relationships until the good feed and prosper. Does that help, Cheryl?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. All right. Anybody else have anything else? Okay. So, share this with others. I mean, you read this and then have other people read it. And if you're the analytic and amiable, can't wait for you to read The Patient's the Silent Killer. Because in that one there, as an amiable and as an analytic, you're a Christian, you're going to think you're a righteous person because you're patient. But are you? Is patience, always good? And being able to go through it, like, is it always good? Or is it sometimes really bad? And then how do we know the difference? How do we discern? Like, how do we have the wisdom to know when to trust and when not to, when to have patience and when not to? How do we know that? Marla, any questions or thoughts you have?
Not at the moment.
Or is it Elmer on? Okay, anybody else have anything else? All right. If you have any questions, connect with the individual who invited you to participate, or you can call toll-free 888-230-2300 outside the U.S. 630-393-9909. Connect somewhere. There should be a 3-minute where you can do a 3-minute personality assessment. There's no charge for it. True Life Masteries Institute, they'll actually do a 30-minute gift. There's no cost to it. 30-minute gift strategy session where you can actually, it takes 3 minutes to fill it out, the information, and then somebody will connect with you and talk to you about that. And it's really fun. And so do that. Always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day.